Personally, I can't see how this could be its own cinematic universe, but I am wearing my Marvel hoodie, so one can hope. Tonight we are going to be talking about Disney Plus's newest film, Flora and Ulysses. And so it is a comic book styled movie about a 10-year-old girl named Flora who discovers a squirrel who gets caught in a home appliance. And I won't say what that is, but it definitely does, help around the house, but it doesn't really help for any animals that are in the nature that just somehow get caught up in it. And so from there, we get the birth of this origin story of this squirrel that adopts these superpowers and a friendship with this little girl. And so from there, we are introduced to not only their friendship, but also her family dynamic and who she looks up to and how she goes about interacting with this squirrel, because she definitely does interact with this squirrel unlike an adult would, or unlike maybe other people her age. It's as if this new friendship with this squirrel is to kind of be an escape for when her relationship with her mother doesn't go as the way she wants it to. Now, her mother isn't awful towards her at all. It's just the family does have some problems that they need to work out, specifically between the mom and the dad. And so I think she acts out just like the dad's superheroes that he's created, because she definitely looks up to her dad. And so I think, in a way, the squirrel definitely is the left and right on her shoulder of the good and bad side of what it means to maybe not have a perfect family, but to still have respect for both of them. So it kind of allows her to not have to choose between them, but to see both sides of what they are going through. And for a 10-year-old, she acts very much adult, and that is because of the way that she is with not only the squirrel, but her parents. Now, Flora does have a lot of time to herself, and so she spends the majority of the film with Ulysses and a boy named William, who is blind temporarily and has trouble seeing throughout the majority of the film. And so with this part of the runtime, we get to also see that the mom is a struggling writer, which I definitely can relate to, and then the dad, who is also a struggling writer, but has kind of given up hopes of his dreams. And so this everyday life routine basically gets halted when the squirrel gets involved. Now, whether Ulysses is trying to find food or to get accustomed to his new superpower abilities, the film definitely does try to recreate that spark that they once had, and they do show flashbacks of how the family used to be compared to how they are now. And so there's a great balance back and forth between trying to get back there and maybe the characters not trying to get back there at all, or not knowing that they are while doing so. As I said, with how Flora has to maybe choose sides, the squirrel definitely does help her in not having to, and repeating this information already, it does seem as if each character in the film is their own villain. And that being said, it's not how they treat Flora any differently. It's just that they have their own thing going on and maybe may not be thinking about Flora in the way that they should be, because they're trying to work on their own problems. And that I found to be really adult about this film. And it is a kid's film, but because of the superhero themes, I feel like it was able to explore those more adult concepts that even Flora herself is having to face because of her family's situation. What I also loved about this film is that it's almost as if the family themselves have become too wild in nature, even though they are already living modern suburban lives, and the squirrel has to learn to be domesticated, but still has the free will to kind of do as he pleases, whether it's getting food or learning about his superpower abilities. There very much is hints to the fact that this is a Disney film, and I did find the fact that there are superhero-littered lore throughout the whole thing that we've seen from other superhero films as well, and other kids' movies. But it definitely stands out as being specifically towards the genre of comic books. So as the film goes on, you begin to learn that there are two relationships constantly going back and forth between the film. That is one of Flora and William, who are around the same age, and start to develop their own friendship, and then as well as the parents and what they're going through and what they're dealing with. Now, I won't get into what they are dealing with because of spoiler territory, but I already discussed maybe the minimal information of what you need to know about these characters. And so by the end, though, as well, the squirrel definitely has his own journey, even though it starts with Flora. But the fact that it is Flora and Ulysses who do get through this together pretty much means for the squirrel that he does end up finding a new family, even if he wasn't searching for one or needed to have one in the beginning of the film. But by the end, you accept that even in nature, that family still matters the most, and also does matter in a modern everyday life. Now, there is a narration that goes throughout the entire runtime of the film, and it also feels like it is just an easy segue into a new act or into a new part of the adventure of the comic book style that they are going through and realizing that they are living in. And by the end of the film, they do kind of go away from that, and eventually they go back to their own kind of origin story, realizing that they don't need that comic book lifestyle to have it, and that it's just an easier way of getting back to who they were before the film even starts, before we learn about these characters, before we knew about where they are now. But they do end up, you do get to see whether or not they end up back to where they were. And it's definitely not because of the style of the comic book. And I think that is what Ulysses teaches this family. And so, in and out of itself, Ulysses, again, teaches them what it's like to be a family. And that is because of the team up of Flora and Ulysses himself. So, without any of that, none of this would happen, and no characters would be changed. It would just be one part of this girl's life, and she has to decide whether or not to let the animal go or to be still continuously being in their lives. So overall, it's just a very adult and funny film, but for a very young audience, which teaches them a lot about relationships and how to maybe avoid the bad parts of how relationships can be and how they can destroy people. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and give my rating for the film. The only downside to this is that I did kind of halfway through check out a few times, and I kind of had to remind myself of what it is I was watching. But I think mainly that's because it's a kids movie, and I constantly remind myself that I'm not that target audience specifically, even though I do love to watch kids movies or movies that aren't always so dark, even though dramas are my absolute favorite. And this is a drama in its own right. It's just definitely more kid-friendly and family-friendly than, say, some of my favorite darkest films that are not for everybody. And so while this movie is also not for everybody, it definitely is if you give it a chance, and if you understand who these characters are going to be, how they're going to act, and that by the end of the film, it probably will be a happy ending. That all being said, though, on Letterboxd, I gave it a 3 stars out of 5, and on a score out of 100%, I'm going to be giving the film a 54% out of 100. Now, it may seem considerably low, but again, I do appreciate the film for what it is, and I did have some very laugh-out-loud moments with it, and very sweet. I would recommend any family to watch it, and it's definitely a Disney film for a Disney audience. With that being said, thank you so much, guys, for watching. I know this is a bit of a longer review, but be looking forward to more reviews soon, and I will see you in the next video.